Hello everyone. It's Sunday morning and a lot of people right now are at their favorite church, and some people are praying and withdrawing into themselves and seeking answers. Some people are jumping up and down and raising their hands and singing and shouting and having a good time. Uh, to each his own, I guess. That's probably the fairest way to look at it, to each his own. But what I've been sitting here pondering about is this Comet ISON that's supposed to be approaching. As far as I've read reports so far, the comet had gotten close to the sun, and scientists were talking about the death of the comet and that it was all over, and then it again reappeared, and they were talking about how the comet has regained life and actually it may even grow. They don't really know. I think that's fair to say, is the scientists do not really know. We may be in for something that we as a civilization has never seen before. We not only have never seen it, we've never experienced it. And that's what I mean by seeing it. I'm talking about seeing it up close and personal. But what is this comet going to do? I guess we can all speculate at this point. Do I have to have some kind of scientific degree to speculate on this subject? In my world, I don't. In the country that I live in, it shouldn't be that way. But people are trained that experts are most important to listen to, and experts come out of colleges, and we also have governmental experts, and they basically dictate the world to us. At this point, again, I'd like to reiterate, we're talking about a subject that is truly unknown. So why am I making this video? Well, I'm making this video to share my opinion. And how I had come up with my opinion has been through research that I've been doing for quite a long time now, and it involves ancient Hebrew, ancient Semitic glyphs of that region of the world, and I structured the glyphs in a format that had come out of the zodiac and other things that I have seen and observed patterns in, and that people, great people of the past, had put together and left for us for this pattern to come out. And one of the great people that had kept a hold of the pattern was Leonardo da Vinci, and I did a video on his Last Supper painting and how each one of the characters in the Last Supper painting had a representation of one of the glyphs that were retained in the Hebrew language. Now, I don't really know, did Leonardo da Vinci come up with this all on his own, that he was going to put little details in his painting that were associated with each glyph in the proper sequence that I had discovered? I really don't know that. I do know that Leonardo da Vinci did his painting over a long period of time, and he was around a lot of religious leaders that did know the attributes of the glyphs and of the letters, and they did end up in the Last Supper painting. Anyhow, that's kind of how I came up with the format on the patterns that I put together and the observations that I had made, such as the pattern started looking like an abstract of the planet Saturn. And I did some video on that prior, and it's just the shape of it that comes out. Another interesting aspect about the shape that I call Saturn, because it looks like Saturn, because it looks like a sphere with a I was at loss for a word. I apologize for that. Well, let me pick up one of them. This is the shape that ends up coming out of it. Now some people would say, well, that looks like a spaceship. Well, yeah, it looks like what some people have made that a spaceship looks like. But it's a basic shape of what the planet Saturn represents, which is the planet in the middle, and then the rings that are around it. And it is an abstract of that. But all the numbers that you see in there, I'm not going to get into full detail on it, but it is how I am coming up with what I believe is going to happen with this comet approaching, Comet ISON. Now, in using this, which is the numbers, which I'm not going to tell you right now how I came up with those numbers in there, but there, it's a pattern, it's a system, it's not random. And here, I have an arrangement of the glyphs. And in the middle, that was a drawing I did on my own, which was representative of a door and the 3 different angles that are within the pattern. That was just something I had come up with myself, and I said, hey, that looks like a heart. I've seen people make hearts that look like that, and they put them all on pictures of the person Yahshua that they renamed Jesus. But anyhow, this is the pattern of the glyphs that I had come up with. And now, when those glyphs were put in the pattern, I noticed that by utilizing the numbers here, that they could be combined together, and that because of, if you look at the center, the number 23, if you look at opposing sides, when the numbers are added up together, well, this one we got 22 and 24. We got 24 and 22, which the average of that would be 23. We got 18 and 5, which this one's 23, but these ones on this side have to be averaged out. Now, with the numbers that lined up here, I ended up with 11s and 12s. And I kind of figured out at that point that this is similar to what is known as the PF6 salt, where an exchange occurs. An exchange in the PF6 salt, I believe it's electrons. I'm not sure exactly what it is, the exchange, off the top of my head. I'm not really a chemist, a scientist, or anything like that. But there is an exchange that occurs here, and that's why this ended up appropriate here in order to balance out these different areas. Now, what this information leads me in the direction of thought, and that's all it is. Listen, don't misquote me. Don't try to say, well, this guy's a psycho, he's crazy, and things like that. I'm talking about symbolism, and that's it. That's all I'm talking about is symbolism. Now, our entire culture revolves around symbolism. You know, we try to make accurate, we try to make, oh, I'm at a loss for a word again. But people try to, well, dictates is what actually happens. And in numbers that we use, we can say, well, we know numbers have certain meanings, but we all view numbers in the form of an accounting method. Even though they are a symbol, the symbols that we commonly use numbers for are the same methods in using accounting, where we have one item and another item, therefore we end up with 2 items. But that's not all that numbers truly represent. There's other representations that, for example, the cultures in Egypt had awareness of. I'm not saying that they developed it. I'm of the opinion that there were cultures before Egypt that were equal or more superior to Egypt and Egypt was just a civilization that survived at that point in time. Anyhow, as these things came together, the pictures, and I was talking about how mixing opposing pictures from the center picture, the interlay that occurs develops a brand new picture. And these brand new pictures have some similarity. If you've ever looked at any other pictures and you've looked at Egyptian pictures, for example, you could see this one right here that developed, and that looks like an Egyptian picture. Now you can see how this one was put together, which was the Ra and the Mu, which is a person and energy, and it kind of looks like a crown that's on that one. You can see how this one developed, and this is the Ta and the Da, which if you were to speak it out, you would say Data or Tada, which is kind of interesting, seeing as people have used that still today. I've heard many of people say "ta-da!" But anyhow, this picture here, it kind of looks like a crown with a cross on it. Or when it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, which I noticed in the drawings that I did, it looks like an apple. But anyhow, the only point I'm trying to make here is that when these pictures combine, they create a new picture, and actually these pictures can be found in other ancient cultures. And that's the only thing I'm trying to get at, is that when I recreated this, actually re-engineered this, what had happened was these pictures coming out, and I noticed, I said, especially this one here, that can this be a total coincidence that I use this in a zodiac method, the way that I put these in this circular fashion, and the way that I decided each placement of one was based on another pattern, and then as all these patterns came together, these pictures emerged, which led me to believe that yes, I was re-engineering something from the past. So what does this information tell me? Well, it may not tell me anything. It may just be a fun arts and crafts kind of project, like it has been for me. I've enjoyed this very much as an arts and crafts project. But what I'm going to use this for is to anticipate and try to figure out what might happen if the comet ISON enters Earth's atmosphere, which that's what people are talking about, or I should say orbit. That's what people are starting to talk about, that it appears that on that day, December 25th, that is very special to many ancient myths, and I'm going to say ancient myths, people are going to be mad at me for saying that because it interferes with their religion, but the Christian religion is not the only religion that uses the date December 25th for their deity. The Greeks had a deity named Mithra, and Mithra had all kinds of similar characteristics as the man, or the myth, I'm going to say myth, Jesus, because the real man's name was Yahshua, and there's no two ways about that. But anyhow, that's why I say that the name Jesus is a myth, and it gets people upset that they call themselves Christians, and it should not. It really should not get them upset, but it does. Anyhow, that becomes a whole new subject. So there are other deities that have the similar December 25th birth date assigned to them, plus the other characteristics that are associated with Mithra, that are associated with Jesus. There's also a character called Sol Invictus, and I personally believe that's why the character Paul, which was supposed to be a disciple of Jesus, why his name was changed to Saul. I believe it was changed for that purpose because of that other prior god. Now, the god Mithra, the god Sol Invictus, those were prior Greek gods. and the writings that people read nowadays that they call their Holy Bible were written by Greek Hebrews. They were Hebrews that took on the Greek culture, and their writings took on this in the same manner as a hero cult. And that's what it is. They're myths, they're deities, and they even take actual people in a hero cult. So it doesn't have to be a total fabrication. It can be an actual person, and that's what has been done in the past. And with this character Jesus, Jesus's character was that, as I had mentioned, of Yahshua. So anyhow, what's going to happen with the Comet ISON? Well, I got some information here that I have to close this program, so I'm not really going to be able to see myself on video. So I'm going to open this back up. And what I was looking at was on nasa.gov about the ionosphere. And in the ionosphere, in the introduction section, has written, the electromagnetic spectrum consists of waves of many wavelengths, ranging from very long wavelength radio waves to very short wavelength gamma rays. Visible light consisting of short wavelength waves is placed near the middle of this spectrum. Now, if you read more about the spectrum, what you will find out is, and if you look down, you will see that there's only a very small optical window, and there's a very small radio window, and then they have what's considered here atmosphere opaque, and then absorption by interstellar gas. These are things that don't make it into our planet, where we can observe what they will cause. Now, I can tell you what they're going to cause should this happen the way it might happen. I'm not going to say this is a prophecy or anything like that. I'm going to say this is a possibility. Now, what happens with the ionosphere, and the reason why I'm talking about what I'm talking about, and how I had mentioned earlier how the mathematics here came up and with the resemblance of the PF6 salt, and how there's a transference that happens here. Here's a representation of what the PF6 salt looks like. This is a geometric shape that I made a couple of years ago. Here's a symbol of the PF6 salt. Anyhow, that probably doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. But the transference that I'm talking about is similar to this transference right here. If you scroll down, and I'm going to give a link with this, where the ionosphere is the title. And what's written is, the ionized part of the Earth's atmosphere is known as the ionosphere. Ultraviolet light from the sun collides with atoms in this region, knocking electrons loose. That's what it is that I'm talking. That's the symbol of the PF6 salt, is the exchange, the loosening of the electrons. That's what I'm talking about, and that's what this symbolism brings together. And again, this is symbolism I'm talking about. Now, I'll continue reading. This creates ions or atoms with missing electrons. This is what gives the ionosphere its name, and it is the free electrons that cause the reflection and absorption of radio waves. So what does all this mean, and what I'm trying to convey? What this means to me, that if the comet ISON gets into the Earth's orbit, or maybe even just close enough that the ionosphere may be affected. And what can happen if that happens is the way we observe our natural surroundings will change. For example, I don't have the information in front of me. What will happen is oxygen, we'll be able to see oxygen, for example. I don't remember what color it is. I want to say the oxygen has a green color. and something else has a red color. I don't really remember. This information is very old. I researched this quite a few years ago. But basically what will happen is our observation will change. And when people start talking about the star wormwood in their Bible and what they're talking about, the water changing to red and things of that nature, that may very well happen, but I'm telling you in advance why it is happening so you don't freak out. There's no sense in freaking out if the rivers look red to you now, or I should say, if the rivers start to look red, there's no reason to freak out. If it looks like green gas is all around, there's no reason to freak out, because it's a condition that had happened from the ionosphere being damaged or changed. I don't know if I should even use the word damaged, but just changed. And it will just be a visual perception if that instant occurs. So I just thought I'd like to share that with people, because the date that it may happen or start to happen is supposed to be December 25th, and it's very close.